Meetings Act, TCA 844-101. Is there anyone here who'd like to make a public comment? If you'll just make sure you turn the microphone on, and you'll have 2 minutes. And please identify yourself by name and address.
This. Got it. Okay. Eric Hoke, Design Director at the Civic Design Center. I'm sharing this comment on behalf of the Civic Design Center, an organization that has been advocating for human-centered design solutions in our city since 2001. A highway-like road design is being proposed 20 years after the Design Center successfully prevented that same result on Korean Veterans Boulevard. We cannot stand idly by. We are concerned by the East Bank Development Authority's proposed 6-lane design for its main street. We do not agree that the East Bank Boulevard needs to be this many vehicle lanes, and here's why. The first community already shared its concern over a 6-lane design during the Imagine East Bank process. Public outcry in addition to 2 alternative concepts in the adopted plan, which showed 2 bus lanes and 2 vehicle lanes. The authority has stated its priorities to make sure that the boulevard is safe, multimodal street that puts pedestrians first. The 6-lane design does not align with these goals. Second, with appropriate road design, Gold Standard Bus Rapid Transit can move 30,000 people per hour in dedicated lanes. Vehicle lanes will only ever move a maximum of about 2,000 people per hour. More car lanes do not support efficiency, more buses do. Finally, Imagine East Bank envisions the area as a mixed-use neighborhood destination. This can be a progressive, transit-oriented community where residents take the bus to work. Stadium goers park elsewhere and walk and ride into the neighborhood. Let's build a livable city we want, not the car-centric city we already have. Design influences behavior, and 1 vehicle lane in each direction with multimodal options will be ideal for the East Bank's future. The Design Center would like to invite Ben York, Anna Greider, and the AECOM engineering team to meet with us and fine-tune the design in response to community feedback. We'll follow up with a formal invitation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Price, and I'm a resident of Davidson County, 1320 Adams Street. Today I'm here on behalf of the Cumberland River Compact, whose mission is to enhance the health and enjoyment of the Cumberland River and its tributaries through education, collaboration, and action. The Compact has a deep history of promoting environmental stewardship and resiliency of urban waterways, including those along the East Bank. The Cumberland River is Nashville's greatest natural resource, and the transformation of the East Bank of the river represents a monumental opportunity to design a new neighborhood for Nashvillians that can be welcoming for its new residents, resilient to withstand a changing future, and drive diverse economic development for the city and for the state. As has been made clear in most of the previous East Bank Development Authority meetings, Imagine East Bank was a tremendous achievement of community input on this new vision. The East Bank Boulevard is the first place this vision has been tested. After the recent community meetings, it should be clear to the authority that the public is still engaged. Today, we'd like to reiterate a few items. First, the need to prioritize an East Bank Boulevard that aligns with our city's green and complete streets vision, supports increasing urban tree canopy, and creates a welcoming streetscape design instead of a 6-lane design that puts cars first. Additionally, we ask that the East Bank Development Authority ensure a transparent decision-making process for designs on the East Bank when requesting community feedback. Transparency can include publishing timelines, sharing summarized community feedback, and identifying responsible parties for final decisions. There will be countless decisions made over the next decades to build and design the East Bank. This is just one of the first. The community deserves to understand how their input will be used and to know if they still have a say. Let's start here. Let's get it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to make any comments?
Good morning. My name is Meredith Montgomery. I am the Executive Director of Walk Bike Nashville. And today I'm speaking to remind everyone that East Bank Boulevard should serve as a shining example of what it looks like when we build the street right from the first time. I continually describe this as a legacy project. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get a road right and influence how people move around the East Bank for decades to come. Since the release of the draft vision plan in 2022, it has been obvious that a 6-lane concept is what is being planned for, but I can't understand why. From a safety perspective, a 6-lane East Bank Boulevard will likely become the next addition to our high injury network because people will be killed and seriously injured. At a time when we are making plans to retrofit most of our arterial roads into slower, narrower, safer streets, why don't we get the East Bank Boulevard right for the first time we build it? We know that roads are with less lanes see less crashes and less people getting killed, and on roads with protected bike lanes, injury rates can be as much as 40% less for all users. That's not just for cyclist crashes, but that's for crashes involving pedestrians and people in cars as well. If safety isn't a convincing argument, let's consider public opinion. In the 2021 Imagine East Bank's multimodal survey, community members prioritized bikeability and walkability, naming provide more spaces to walk and bike as the top design preference for the boulevard. Many of our elected officials have echoed this perspective as well. In a pre-election questionnaire in 2023, 21 of the 22 current Metro Council members who responded, plus Mayor O'Connell, said they preferred a design with 2 general travel lanes and a dedicated bike facility. Only one respondent preferred the 6-lane concept that has been shown on the public survey. But this is not about what we like or what we think looks nicer. It's about which design makes the street work better for everyone. This is not an issue of bike lanes or no bike lanes. This is about who the boulevard is being built for. It's about the people. The road should not be designed for car traffic that doesn't yet exist.
Your time's up. If you can just wrap up your thought, please.
Yep, it should be designed for people and their social, economic, and safety needs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Trey Bussey, an attorney with the Southern Environmental Law Center here in Nashville. I also want to encourage this board to ensure that the East Bank Boulevard becomes a vibrant street where it is safe and convenient to walk, bike, or take public transit. After more than 50 public meetings, Metro Planning adopted the Imagine East Bank plan, which, quote, prioritizes the experience of transit riders, cyclists, and pedestrians. Because of public feedback, the plan included East Bank Boulevard designs with 4 lanes and protected bike infrastructure. A majority of Metro Council members and Mayor O'Connell have expressed support for 4-lane designs for the boulevard. Unfortunately, the Boulevard project team has been prioritizing a 6-lane option. Not only is that dangerous for pedestrians, cyclists, and public transit users, but it also threatens air quality. Transportation is Nashville's biggest source of air pollution, and the American Lung Association just gave Nashville a failing grade on air quality. Transportation is also our biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and Nashville has a plan and a commitment to reduce those emissions 80% by 2050. By promoting public transit, walking, and biking, a 4-lane East Bank Boulevard would help Nashville clean up its air and achieve our climate goals. A 6-lane design goes the wrong way. The proposal appears driven by traffic projections of how many cars would drive through East Bank Boulevard, but that's not up to a traffic engineer to decide. That's up to Nashville. It's a new street in a new neighborhood. As a city, we decide what kind of East Bank we want. A 6-lane road cannot achieve the vibrant, safe, multimodal neighborhood Nashville citizens and leaders have asked for. I encourage this authority to weigh in and ensure that the project team studies and prioritizes a 4-lane design for the East Bank Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
I'm Izzy Witt with Walk Bike Nashville and also Families for Safe Streets Tennessee, which is an advocacy and support group for families who have lost loved ones to road violence and survivors of road violence. In just the past 2 weeks, we have seen 2 cyclist fatalities, another cyclist with critical injuries, and 2 pedestrians have been hit by cars, and that's just what was on the news. One of those pedestrians is named Zach. He was here on vacation for his 21st birthday with his parents, and now he will spend the next few months in and out of the hospital. Also, last fall, on 2 separate occasions downtown, we saw Michael O'Connell and Leroy Winky. They were here on business and vacation, and they never returned home. We can't keep doing this to our tourists and our beloved community members. These are preventable injuries and deaths, and we need to build an infrastructure that supports the safety of pedestrians and cyclists, and 6-lane roads are not that. If safety is really a priority for the East Bank Boulevard, it will not have 6 lanes. Please keep our beloved community members and tourists in mind during this planning process. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll move on to the next matter on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from the April 22nd meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Those are approved. Next item on the agenda, the update on the East Bank Development Authority's CEO employment contract. Mr. York.
Good morning, Board. Thank you all. Thank you, public, for being here. So we have a brief update on my contract. It is going to be a 3-party agreement between Metro Government, the Development Authority, and myself. It will entail the ability for Metro employees that are currently transitioning to the East Bank Development Authority to retain their public status, public civil servant status. Well, removing the civil servants portion of it, but keeping their benefits. So that's the reason for the tri-party. We got a draft in Friday from the Metro team. We will be disseminating that between the board and legal counsel, which we'll have an update on in a minute. But that is the current update. We hope to have that in front of you for consideration at the next meeting. Questions? Okay.
Good morning, Board. Anna Greider, COO of the Development Authority. I'm going to give a quick update on legal representation. We are using Metro departments and working closely with them, including human resources, ITS, planning, finance and procurement. As it's just Ben and I, we're neither fully experts in any of those things or authorized to be. And so leaning on the core services that Metro provides to help us in the process. And that will include legal representation. We'll be using Metro Legal unless there's a conflict of interest, similar to the representation we had from Saul Solomon and his firm in negotiating the IGA, in which case we will seek independent counsel at that time. But for all other matters, we'll be using Metro Legal similar to other Metro boards and commissions. Any questions on that?
Yes, quick question on the legal representation. What are the pros and cons of going ahead and having an independent legal counsel in a contract rather than waiting for those moments to arise where there is a conflict of interest, and especially when quick decision making needs to be made?
I will start, but we have Tom Cross with Metro Legal here who can probably do a better job than me. Okay.
Our department represents not just other boards and commissions, but specifically authorities, which are a little bit different. The authorities have more independence, and you're a separate legal entity, and you're entitled to the attorneys of your choosing. But this works pretty well. I will say historically, the closest analog we have is the sports authority, which is structured similarly, and it's actually pretty unusual for there to be a conflict that requires somebody else. And in every instance I can think of, over the life of that authority, more than 20 years, we've seen that coming far enough in advance so that it hasn't been necessary to have somebody else. If we run into this frequently, yeah, you should consider hiring somebody just to have on standby, but it hasn't been an issue with the sports authority.
Does this require a vote?
I don't believe this requires a vote. It does not.
Good. Yeah, we can pick up representation at any time. So if the need ever arises, Hannah and myself can hire independent counsel with feedback from you guys, of course, or when we see a need arising, in the middle of a month, we can do that and have that on board because we have that purchasing power built into the development authority from the state enabling legislation.
And is this does this not require a vote because this is the department's decision?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
Question.
I'm kind of piggyback on Caitlin. I really think we need independent counsel personally right now. I mean, get it on the front end as needed basis. I'm on the airport authority and it works beautifully that we have our own counsel to, confidentiality, and we can run things by our counsel. So that's just my opinion.
And I think I'd agree with that assessment.
Okay. Well, we'll look into it and discuss it internally and see if we can, because as of right now, we don't have a budget. And so till we have a budget, we run into the same issues we ran into with Saul's team hiring them. And so we're working through that problem and that opportunity as well. So, which we'll cover in the next section.
Does anybody else have any thoughts you'd like to share for them to consider? All right. Thank you for those updates.
All right. The next update we'll have is about staffing and policies. We've been working with Metro HR to develop our own employee handbook. We took the Metro Civil Service Commission and we pulled pieces that we liked from that. We took pieces from the Convention Center Authority that pulled pieces from that to structurally build our own kind of carte blanche, what we thought was the best pieces of that. We have a draft that we're internally working through. We should have that done within the next week. With the onus of we've got to have that in place before we can start discussing employment contracts with others. And so there's expectations with that. It will cover all of the general things that are inside of a normal employee handbook, attendance policies, leave time, things of that nature. It will also be amendable at the staff level, such that we can do that kind of independently. If we find out, we missed a section, we can update that immediately. And so those are the things. One additional that we do have for you that will come shortly is we're doing a quarterly report. Our program management team will do a quarterly report. That report will be made so if quarter one is over, the second meeting of the month or the second meeting of the next quarter, we'll have that available for that. So the first one that you'll see is the one in August for quarter two. So we're working on the structure of that right now, what that looks like, what information is covered. We're working with our program team on that. There's working on how to build the financial analysis into that so that the program is understood from that perspective as well. So we are working on that. Pause there, see if there's any questions, things that you would like us to cover in that. Okay. The next one is staffing. We are a team of two. We're looking to expand that team, but we're not looking to expand that team so rapidly that it's unmanageable and unattainable. We want to make sure that we keep our North Star. We understand what our vision is and our mission statement. And so working through that as a process, we are looking to hire 4 employees over the next 3 to 4 months. We'd like to hire them tomorrow, but onboarding 3 or 4 people at the same time is just not feasible when we're just the two of us working. And so we are working through that. I'll go back. So the staffing that we're looking to hire is a finance director is our first position that we look to hire. Anna is a very strong planner. I am a very strong engineer. Between the two of us, we can handle a lot of the planning, design, and construction aspects, phasing, scheduling, things of that nature. We are struggling through the finance portion of it. We are leaning heavily on our existing Metro Finance Department currently, and we have been for several months. And so they would like to get some of their employees back, and so we're going to work on getting a finance director put together for the first package. We've sent the job description to the HR department to note one day in the future when there is a team of people as the development authority, we will be able to do this procurement and this solicitation ourselves. As of right now, we don't structurally have that ability. So we're working with the HR department and the finance department of Metro government to ensure that we're doing these things appropriately. One thing that is allowed by the development authority that is not typically allowed in civil service is direct hire. And so we are exploring options for direct hire potential as well. So more on that information to be coming. But Additional information or additional staff would be the public information officer, communications, government liaison, community liaison, whatever. We haven't figured out exactly what that title is, but it would be our communication strategy. And then a program manager or project manager for engineering and for planning and design. Currently, this is our staffing org chart. I think it's a little difficult to read from a scale size, but this is our general layout of what we currently have structured in our vision. This is subject to change, but the dashed lines are year 2 projections of staff. So looking at that, we go from 2 to 6. To year 2, we would be into 10. That is, we're going to be very selective in choosing who's on the team because this is such a small team. We have to make sure that it's a well-oiled, well-functioning machine, and so we want to ensure that the fit is correct and that the vision is cast throughout the team. All right, and I'll pause to ask if there's any questions on staffing, policies, anything.
What's the proposed timeline? You said you're starting with the finance director. What's the timeline for having all 4 of them hired?
We would like to have all 4 hired by the end of the summer. I think that's a little bit of a lofty goal, but we're envisioning that we would go through that process. We hope to have the finance position out on the street within the next 2 weeks. So if you know any good finance people, we'd love to have them.
Is it possible to get a copy of those job descriptions?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. We can get those sent out to you guys as they're finalized. Or would you rather see drafts?
As they're finalized.
Perfect.
Actually, right before they're finalized.
Yeah.
So that one.
Will do.
Final draft.
That's right. Final draft.
Okay. We will make sure to do that. All right.
Oh, Ben, I had one last question. I think all this sounds great, and clearly a lot of thought's been put into it. One big overarching question is, how does this change, if any, HDR's contract, since seemingly that contract is to supplement the staffing of the development authority as we get off the ground? What shifts are anticipated there, if any?
I think we would pull some of the decision making out of the HDR team. With Anna and I's kind of change in role, we've had to let go of some of the day-to-day operations of making pointed decisions, guiding work, really kind of holding the reins on that. And so we had about 18 months with the HDR team. And so they completely understood our pacing, our workflow, how we worked. And so it's been a very natural transition, allowing them to kind of supplement and take some of the lead on those items. They still come to us daily with reports, weekly with understanding of staff level, what we're doing, how do those things structure and function. I think as we bring, especially the project managers from Anna and myself's replacement, we would hope that those positions would come in and take over some of those day-to-day decision-making and kind of holding the reins, guiding the program again. All right. Well, here comes the really fun. I hope nobody falls asleep. So the last several months, we've really kind of tried to figure out how to get everybody onboarded and understanding where we are in the world and what's going on. And so we've done a deep dive into the planning effort that occurred. We've done a deep dive into the Fallon deal. We've done deep dives into several other things. And so today, we're going to have a deeper conversation on infrastructure and what that means. And so some people may glaze over because it happens when we start talking sometimes. So just to level set so that everybody remembers what our area of impact is and what our responsibility is, it's the whole 550 acres. And built within that 550 acres are the major projects of Oracle, RMR, the stadium, and the IDA. We do show in this slide, just for reference, the scrap metal yard site and its entire 60 plus acres. And so that is there as a known quantity, but an unknown as in what happens with it. So it's something that we can't plan for, but it's something that we can't plan without. And so we're keeping that as a topic that's floating in our minds, understanding that it's still there and can and will be redeveloped in the near future. So that is our area of responsibility. what we have done over the last several years is we've talked in scales. And so we talk at the 30,000 foot level, the 10,000 foot level, and then we're putting a water line in the ground level. And so we talk about that in scales, and you'll see throughout this kind of conversation where we go from master planning to implementation. And so that's how this entire conversation is structured. And so big picture, these are the items that we've kind of walked through over the last several months and years, is how we plan for just the simple things in life, being able to flush a toilet or turn a water faucet on and having the demand there. We've been working with all of our partners in various stakeholder groups, Water, Metro Water, NES, Colonial, Piedmont, all of the natural or known parties. The baseline that we kind of worked into the scale of, now we've drilled down into the Metro-owned land, is the foundational needs and the things that have been completed on the Metro-owned land are the survey for the entire property, right-of-way master planning, preliminary engineering report for all the utilities, and the mass grading plan. And so over the next few slides, we'll kind of dive a little bit deeper into what those each mean. So there was a detailed survey completed under Kimley Horn's contract. A subconsultant did that work. Metro now owns that survey for all 130 acres of the land in and around that area. It includes all of the roadway infrastructure, all the subsurface infrastructure within the 130 acres. And so that survey is foundational to understanding how we structure in land deals for, say, Fallon or TPAC or future parties. It also is foundational in understanding how we do our land planning from an infrastructure standpoint. What water lines are there? What water lines do we need? What gas mains are existing? Which ones do we have to relocate? Which ones do we need to keep? And so from that, we took the next logical step is we took the vision document layout and the understanding of the cross sections that were within that, and we started layering in all of the knowns of what is NDOT's utility policy, what is Metro Water's policy on clearances, vertical separation, horizontal separation, what is Piedmont and Colonial's. And so we started laying in typical road sections, noting that the principles in the vision document were the guiding post. And so we were trying to fulfill those and still lay in that infrastructure. So we went through that process of setting those cross sections. That led us to a preliminary engineering report. So the preliminary engineering report just basically said, in these blocks, these are the types of land uses that could be allowed, not necessarily 100% what will be constructed, but these are the types that would be allowed to allow us to do land planning for demand models for water and sewer. This allowed us to go in and set a utility infrastructure for all parties within the Metro-owned land. Now, you will see that this kind of escapes the Metro-owned land because we had to conclude all of the down basin infrastructure as well to make sure that we weren't building all of the infrastructure in the Metro-owned land higher than would be service south of here or north of here. And so all of that to say, all of that work completed early last year, March of 2024. And to note, the Oracle River North campus will include the same level of detail in the near future. We've tried to stay wholly focused on the Metro-owned land because that's the land that we control. That's the land that we can continue to grow and thrive. We are working with our partners at Oracle and the River North community to figure out how to land plan that from a utilities perspective as well. So that framework led us to additional utility coordination. And so from there, we've worked with Metro Water Services on 2 sewer pump stations that are required to facilitate development on the East Bank, one being located on the north, one being located on the south, and magically we call them the Southern Pump Station and Northern Pump Station. And so to make sure that those two function in a way that are agreeable and that they would service the entire community. We have been working with the teams on potable water design to ensure that all of the pipes are sized to scale that would allow for future development, but also not cause water quality problems in the current layout. There's a whole magic bubble there where you design them too big and you get standing water and you get stagnant water and you lose your ability to service facilities. We've also worked with the water department on 2 additional, one being a district-wide stormwater solution and a stormwater district, which we'll talk about here in a moment. and then also working with the Corps of Engineers and Metro Water Services on establishing the floodplain, making sure that we are being resilient and future-proofing this development. One other additional is the NES team has been an awesome partner to date. They're working with us. They see some additional need and balance there for them and reliability with building everything underground. And so as an agency, we're working with them and Metro Legal and Metro ITS on building communications duct bank and NES duct banks throughout the East Bank to service the area to provide that reliability and sustainability. We also are partnering with the NDOT and NES teams on LED lighting standards. There's a conversion within the county to transition into LED. We are working with them on setting a lighting standard that would be used throughout the East Bank, and so that has been an ongoing task with that team.
Ben, real quick, when are the FEMA maps due out?
You're burying my lead, but the FEMA maps are currently in draft form. They were submitted by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to the federal government, to FEMA, and we don't know when they will become official. However, we understand from our water department that once they've gotten to this point, they very rarely transition back or change in a substantive fashion. And so we are doing all of our planning such that if they decided that 200 was the elevation, 200 is the elevation. And so we're building off of that as our kind of a benchmark for all of that.
Any problems?
I think there's opportunity. I think what we can see is that the Army Corps of Engineers and Metro Water Services have been very deliberate about making sure that we are planning and we are not putting people's lives in danger. We're building for a future where resiliency is a kind of a paramount for a community that will be built on the river. And so I don't think there's any problems per se. I would say that there's opportunities for us to understand how to build resilient and understand how to build into the river and build within the river floodplain that allows us. To note that we are efforting having next month have a deep dive on this topic, and this topic specifically have the Corps of Engineers come in and do the discussion on the determination of the floodplain and how they got to where they are, and then have our Metro Water team come in and let us know what that means. And so hear all of the technical analysis that occurred and then have them explain to us what that technical analysis really means for us. To note, we are planning our infrastructure to be 1 foot, public infrastructure to be 1 foot above the new floodplain line that they are establishing. And then all of the public or private and public buildings would be built in the similar fashion that's in the stormwater management manual that exists today. So, like I said, we started with a 30,000 foot level of is it feasible, technically feasible, is it possible, and understanding can we service all of these facilities and how would we service these facilities in a safe and efficient manner. We don't need 12 pipes going 12 different directions. Let's try to figure out how to build one trunk and then branch off that trunk in a good planning exercise. So then we took that and we built it into a 30% design document. Kimley Horn was our engineer of record on this. They built in a 30% design that has conflict analysis built into it that assumes elevations for stormwater, assumes elevations for water, for gas, all of the duct banks that would be proposed. And so they did that work. Additional considerations will be occurring north and south of the Metro and land, but we've set those up in such a manner that those should be reasonably attachable to the infrastructure that we built here. Likewise, we did a similar effort in the potable water design. These are going to kind of get redundant, but just want to kind of iterate that we do have a lot of kind of detail built into the background that isn't kind of publicly shown, because most people don't love to talk about water lines and where they go and all of the the details behind that. We do have a 30% design that was kind of coordinated with our NES partners. And so Metro government through the East Bank team will be exploring options to bring all of the overhead electric underground throughout the 550 acres. Kind of a piggyback on that is when we bring an NES power line down, we would like to understand what that means from a comms perspective and a low voltage perspective, and build a separate duct bank or an attached duct bank to the NES duct bank that allows for those users to be accounted for subsurface as well, so that we can reduce the number of poles and the reliability of the overall network. So this kind of, you buried my lead a little bit, but here's the stormwater district. Metro government set out a independent stormwater district for the East Bank. It allows us to have our own, we don't call them standards because we keep the existing Metro Water standards, but we do have our own kind of internal review with Metro Water that allows for a full determination of what happens if the East Bank is filled to a certain elevation. They are seeking a no rise from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which would allow for us to not have to do cut fill compensation within the 550 acres. We, Metro, are looking at opportunities to do some balanced cut fill opportunities through the park design, through the open space design along the Cumberland River, laying back the bank, understanding what that means for the park, and how we can functionally build that so that it's passively flooding. More on that probably in coming months. But we are looking at opportunities for that. And so the enabling legislation, the Council Bill 2024-381 is there. I can send out a link to it if you'd like to read on it. It's really good stuff. So they did seek the no rise. They're working with the Corps of Engineers on that, understanding what that means and how to represent that within the East Bank and what that means for all of the developments, not just the Metro on land, but all of the developments within the East Bank. One of the elements in the framework plan that Kimley Horn completed was a pluvial framework. And so it's a fancy way of saying understanding how to land plan for the open space and the stormwater mitigations. And so we're working through that, what that means, how we land plan that. And so in a few minutes, we'll start talking about some of the implementation items. And one of them is based on this slide in of itself and how we understand the open space, the public park that we're proposing. Currently, we are in design for a couple of different pieces of infrastructure. And so we have public design through the East Bank team for NES, ITS duct banks along Interstate Drive. We see some efficiencies doing that during the work of the stadium. Doesn't feel like a good time to let the stadium go through full construction, open it up, and then immediately start tearing up brand new roads, brand new infrastructure that they just placed. So while there's open road cuts, we're going to go ahead and try to backfill that and be as least impactful to the existing businesses over there. There is also a primary utility corridor within the Shelby KVB right-of-way that is necessary for utilities south of KVB as well as the IDA parcels. And so we're working through what the design of those pieces of infrastructure look like, the water, the sewer, the gas, the electric, duct banks, and things of that nature. So, and then additionally, we are working with the Titans and their design team on during the construction of South 2nd, as that is a 50-50 partnership between Metro government and the Titans, what utilities are necessary to connect between Woodland and KVB and how we make those connections and what those sizings are. And so we're working through the design of those. All right, and so now we transition out of the infrastructure that nobody ever sees, hopefully, because they're all buried, to infrastructure that's on the ground and that is kind of known. And so we're looking at this as the mobility infrastructure. So we looked at subsurface infrastructure, and now we're talking about a little bit about the mobility infrastructure. As our kind of tent pole and our guiding principle is we're planning this for a transit hub, for transit to be the main mode of traffic through into the East Bank. And so we've been working with our partners at WeGo and NDOT on what that means from a transit perspective. We have taken, we were doing our planning long before Connect Downtown started, and we were doing our planning before they started the Main Street Corridor project and the Chime projects as well. And so we're working through what those mean. Sorry, I just got to talking. Sorry. And so So we are working with our partners at those three agencies. So we will be working pretty regularly with Chime and their new CPO, and we will be working with NDOT and WEGO on how we land plan the mobility infrastructure on the East Bank. So once we started looking at the larger scale, we started drawing in on what that means for the East Bank. And so we did do some land planning for the entirety of the East Bank. We have done a significant amount of understanding of how you get through into the East Bank. We're now looking at what that means for the road grid within the East Bank and what that road grid means for the area within the Central Waterfront. The Central Waterfront is the 130 acres that Metro owns, and so those are used interchangeably. In this slide, you will see there was 30% design documents completed on the road infrastructure. That also includes and shows graphically the boulevard. That work was not completed to a 30%. It was done to a 5% or less schematic drawing, basically to the intent of showing how the rest of the road grid could tie to the boulevard. The boulevard is a wholly separate project that is being carried out by a different agency. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. But to note here, we are working with our different partners at NDOT to understand what that means. And so we, as the East Bank Development Authority, are an implementation item and tool. And so we are working on gathering data, putting together all of the plans that are associated with, and then showing the asset owner, the eventual asset owner, NDOT or WEGO, what those assets would be, and having them speak into and allow for us to continue design on those. And so the asset owner will be a key piece of decision making within that. They will be making that decision with us in a logical and a normal fashion. We will not be the overarching guiding decision maker on that, but we will be the kind of the implementation tool of showing the asset owner what the possibilities are and what the cross sections of these roads are and what the road grid would be. So based on that, some of the guiding principles that we have used throughout the East Bank on design of roadways are listed here. I won't read them verbatim, but they are the Vision Zero, the NACTA Complete Streets guidelines that we have adopted at NDOT. And so we're working off of all of these as design principles. So when we handed Kimley Horn the design contract, we told them these are some of the tent posts, these are the guiding rails that they should stay within for all of the infrastructure within the East Bank. And so we took the Imagine East Bank vision document, we took these guiding principles, and we married them together to come out with the 30% design documents that are currently exist. So from that, we started discussing how back to the grand scale. So we did transit on a grand scale. We did transit on a local scale. Now we're doing non-motorized mobility on a grand scale and non-motorized mobility on a local scale. And so from that, you can see that we've kind of worked with our partners at Parks and at NDOT on what that means from a non-motorized mobility. The graphic that shows all of the sidewalk infrastructure is illegible because it has way too many lines on it, and you just can't make heads or tails of what that means. So this is the biking infrastructure, and this starts to show the ability for Metro as a whole to connect all of our great communities in East Nashville, North Nashville, to the East Bank and to downtown in a logical fashion with the plans that are currently in place. That would be through the Spokes project, through some of the redevelopment of the Oracle campus with the Ped Bridge over the river, with the connections to Cheatham Park, and then ultimately to East Nashville through the Ellington Parkway Skyway. So then we start to move down into the East Bank, and so into a smaller scale, and how we land plan that from a smaller scale. We have planned this with about 9.5 to 10 miles of bike facilities on the East Bank. And so we're looking at the most dense bike network within the East Bank, or within the city of Nashville, within the county. We're really excited about that. We think that's a great win for the city from a non-motorized mobility perspective. All public roads will be associated with wide sidewalks, which allow for urban users. This is a dense urban neighborhood, and so we're looking at opportunities to get people to allow people to choose other modes of transportation as they see fit. And so let me go back and say, to note, one thing to note, all of the bike facilities that we currently have planned within the East Bank are at curb height. They're very similar to the Gulch, but we've learned one lesson in the Gulch, that we need to separate modes in that way, such that there's the ability to have bikes use one piece of the infrastructure and PEDs to use a separate piece to allow for safe and efficient mobility. And so we are using that. We are buffering those uses so that they have the ability to come and go and move in a logical and easy fashion. So next, we're going to transition and talk about our top 5 priorities. And so we talked about kind of the big scale. We talked about kind of the granular detail. And so moving that into, okay, so how do we start building things and making sure that they're built in a fashion that kind of aligns with the goals and the priorities of the Development Authority. And so these are the top 5 projects that we kind of have going right now. One of them kind of encompasses the entire East Bank. That would be the East Bank Boulevard design. And then the others are really focused on the Metro-owned land. Metro wants to be a very good partner and show that these are the way forward for the rest of the neighborhood from an open space and planning perspective. And so we are working with our AECOM team. AECOM was a contract that was let through NDOT that the Development Authority has assumed. That contract team has the sole responsibility of planning a boulevard that connects north to south. The logical termini for that project are from the future Cleveland Street extension all the way south to KVB. There will be the option for a final phase that would be south of KVB, and how that boulevard connects into the network and where it goes and what's its termini as well. And so we're working with that. We did have a public meeting a couple of weeks ago. That public meeting was well attended, and we've sought public feedback. To date, we've received about 880 public comments through the online and the in-person meeting. We are working through the NEPA process, and so the entirety goal of that for Metro is to make sure that we keep ourselves federally funding eligible. If we misstep, if we cross a line, if we kind of get outside the process, we lose our ability to seek future federal funding. And that would impact our ability to design or to construct, as well as for our partners that we go to operate within the corridor as well. So there is this process of an alternatives analysis, and what I'm learning from our AECOM team is everybody all over the country calls this a different thing. And so I think a lot of what has happened is there's been a misnomer on the actual words used by some of our partners at AECOM, some of the partners on the East Bank team, and by myself in particular. And so what we are currently doing is we have, and we'll show the schedule kind of where we are in a few minutes, but where we are is we've kind of got a process where we have gone through and we have selected several alternatives. Those alternatives were within the Imagine East Bank guiding document. They're the 3 shown on the side here. There is a 4th as well, and I'll show that on the next slide. We are trying to look at this from a data-driven solution, from a use and mobility and how the grid is recreated, and understanding what is useful and needed from a design perspective, utilizing all of the standards that we had for local streets and applying those to the boulevard as of itself. So from that, we showed these 4 cross sections at the public meeting as our alternatives. There are 4 different ones. There are 2 general purpose travel lanes in the top left with 2 bus lanes, wide medians, 11 to 12 foot median, that would allow for a WeGo stop in the center of the road. This is kind of the preferred location for WeGo. You notice that all of these cross sections do not show curbside loading. This allows for them to have the most reliable headways and reliable comings and goings traveling through the corridor to the corridor. And so that is the preferred location for them, is the center running. We do have wide sidewalks located on the boulevard. We do have green infrastructure. We are looking with our AECOM team partners on ability to provide and perform green infrastructure that would be bioswales, rain recapturing systems of some sort within this corridor as well. And like I said, at the next board meeting, we can go through a deeper dive if that is something that you'd like to do. We are working on a PowerPoint that would kind of get into where we are in the process, how we may make decisions, what decisions are on the horizon, and who would be making those decisions.
Back up one. In all these slides is brick to brick the same distance?
Currently, at this time, we are looking at a marginal 110-foot cross-section that would be edge to edge. And so all of these sections include that. There is an opportunity that if, travel lanes come out, if bike facilities go in, if sidewalks get wider or narrower, you could move that. But we've gotten guidance from our planning department that 110 feet is about as wide as they would allow and permit from a use standpoint for that placemaking. And so some of the additional items that weren't covered in detail in the previous slide about applying standards, these are things that we have kind of penciled into the AECOM team, much like the Kimley Horn team. We handed them design standards that we said these are kind of guide rails that you have to design around. These are the types of things that we have. The next two slides are things that we have told our design team at AECOM. These are the things you must design, no questions asked. And so things like access management in city, we don't have a good access management corridor. And so understanding what that access management corridor looks like, how it functions, how we plan for comings and goings off the boulevard, how we make those movements and those turns, and how we plan that from a perspective. Additionally, signalization is a big one as well. And these are things that Metro NDOT are already starting to implement all over the county. But these are things that are going to be decision points in the East Bank as well. And so from a perspective of schedule, where we are is we have finalized the public input. We are at a place where we are understanding where the design is currently, what the design is as well. And so there's an entire study or an entire kind of framework for the conversation. We do intend to have the public comment put into as you can imagine, there is a large outpouring, the 880 pieces of infrastructure or pieces of information. We are taking that information, putting it into a spreadsheet and a frequently asked questions, because there's about a 10 to 15 points that are within all of the questions that are that need to be kind of answered. And so we're looking at how to best do that. We have a frequently asked questions bulletin that we're putting together that we're going to put on our website, so that we do have the ability to kind of put the public comment back out there so that everybody's comment is heard, understood, and where we are with those comments. All right. We do not have a decision made on cross-section. We do not have a decision made officially on alignment. We are working towards those conversations would occur over the next 6 months. The decision point would be made when the EA is submitted to our authority having jurisdiction. Currently, this is a NEPA completed without a federal nexus, and such that we don't have authority having jurisdiction to officially review. We are working through ensuring that our NEPA document is completed in such a way that if submitted and when submitted to the federal government, the authority having jurisdiction, that it would be approved and approved in a way that meets all of their criteria. All right, I'll pause there. Any questions?
I don't have questions. I'm trying to debate how much I want to get into, like, the process, having gone through this multiple times, that we get feedback and then we have the design is assessed not in a room with a bunch of us. So seeing that large boulevard, knowing that that's public comment, can you speak a little bit more to what the process of resolution to that is going to be? I know you kind of said it, but I need you to say it again.
Yeah. So the resolution is we will take the public comment, we will take the community comment, we'll take the department comments. We, as the development authority and the implementation tool, will take all of that data in. We will push it to the AECOM team and say, AECOM team, push us back a design solution that tries to find the knife's edge and balances the community input versus the needs of the data that is being created throughout the East Bank. And so we will then have a conversation with our design partners at the departments. So we go NDOT, planning, and we will have those conversations with them from a asset owner kind of point of view and how we move that ball forward from there. Does that answer your question? All right. All right. So that's the first. And we'll with our Army Corps of Engineers Metro Water conversation at the June meeting, we'll also do a deep dive into this boulevard conversation. And we can give you more specifics on where we are, what the public feedback and where it was posted, and the data-driven scenarios that we're working through as well. So the next big piece of infrastructure that we're working on is James Robertson Parkway. Currently exists as a elevated deck, 25 to 30 feet in the air. And we're working on moving that infrastructure to a way that is at grade. It recreates the Main Street feel. NDOT is doing a lot of land planning on the Main Street corridor coming from the county line all the way into this point. And I think it would be a big miss for the city and miss the kind of the symbiotic nature of moving that through the East Bank into the Connect Downtown study as well. And so we're looking at that and how we do that. We have been working with our TDOT partners. TDOT is the asset owner. This does fall on the state highway system. It picks back up at the termination of Ellington Parkway and comes across the river into downtown. So this is a TDOT asset. We are working with them. They've been a great partner to this date. We did seek a community funding project through Congressman Rose. We were awarded it, but it was never funded. And so it has died, and we've reapplied for that. We have not heard back from the outcome of that. That occurred 2 weeks ago. We did apply for that. We applied for the full funding for the project, design and implementation. And so we are working with his office to understand whether we're going to be able to seek that grant and what the outcome of that grant would be. All of that would be in partnership with our state partners. This asset does unlock a massive amount of development. It unlocks everything from the stadium to Main Street, James Robertson, and then everything north of James Robertson as well. To note, this is a similar condition of Woodland Street. So if you see Woodland Street today, it would be a very similar condition of how it comes over from an elevation perspective. We are exploring what the cross-section would be on that and making sure that we are continuing the cross-section from the Main Street corridor. All right, the last piece of the puzzle that I will talk about is the utilities serve the initial development area. We currently have the Interstate Drive, NES, and ITS Duct Bank project that is funded. We do have the funds in hand for that. We have the design working on substantial completion. We're working on figuring out who's going to build it and how we move that forward. We've looked at opportunities to utilize existing contracts within Metro government, or whether we set out an individual procurement to figure out that. And so we're working through how that gets done. We are targeting to have that completed before the stadium opening. That would be a very good opportunity for Metro. There is the utility corridor project that I talked about a moment ago. It is a significant dollar figure, but it does unlock development south of the East Bank or south of KVB into the property, the PSC scrap metal project as well. There are also some utility relocations required in the IDA that Metro must undertake in order to move those forward and allow Fallon to develop those properties. One is an ITS and an AT&T duct bank that exists at the corner. If you're familiar with the site out there today, it's where the Sunbelt Rentals tent is at the corner of 2nd and KBB. And so it runs underneath that. We would need to relocate it out of the old Shelby Street right-of-way into the new KBB, hard to say new, into the existing KBB right-of-way. And then the overhead power on Sylvan Street, working on an option to bring that either subsurface or relocate it above grade until such a time as we can do a grid project to allow to put that underground. To note, the NES overhead on Sylvan and the Shelby are unfunded. Those are items that we would look to fund in the next capital spending plan that we're going to work with the mayor's office and get that in our budget for next year.
Okay, that was a lot of Ben talking. Good job. So as you can tell, Ben and I are well versed at working at multiple scales, from high level down to there's a short fiber line here that needs to be moved. I'm going to hit on just two, and these are the last two things we're going to outline with you, two of the more bigger picture public infrastructure components. So the first being conversations and concepts around improvements to the Siegenthaler pedestrian bridge. As you're all familiar with, it's an elevated pedestrian structure and is a critical part of stitching East Nashville and downtown together. And we are interested in seeing improvements to that pedestrian bridge, in particular to ADA accessibility, so bringing it to a much smoother grade, as well as adding a bike ramp to allow folks to easily get across from East Nashville and downtown via bike as well. So if you had a chance to look at the public realm framework plan that the field operations did for Fallon, there was some high-level visioning on the pedestrian bridge. Again, it has this elevated condition that, if you can picture in the future, would have development on either side of it. And so we would end up with a really unique and interesting public space of having both people over and below, similar to the High Line in New York. Kind of makes a really interesting place when you have people above and below. And so thinking about how we do that well, we're not going to be touching any of the historic structure right before the elevator bank. The bridge is historic, and so all adjustments would be made following away from the historic component. And the idea would be to make it a wide public space, but also can carry large crowds for events that are happening at the new stadium. So there will be a required 35-foot wide public right-of-way, which is what it is today. But in this instance, we would be using the land on either side of the pedestrian bridge so that you could have seating, et cetera, in the center of the pedestrian bridge. And then you would spill out into parcel E and F on either side of the pedestrian bridge. And as I mentioned, we're exploring a bike ramp addition as well. This would, we have gone through multiple alternatives for the bike ramp to connect bikes from the pedestrian bridge to the ground level. We're currently, this is, I think, alternative 2A. That we're exploring the opportunity to bring people. It would be a shared bike and pedestrian ramp that would bring people down to the riverfront much quicker than the situation that we have today. So very early in concepts here, but wanting to share with you kind of some of the explorations we're doing for the bike and ped infrastructure. And then finally, Parks and Greenways. HDLA is our partner on this work. They are working on a Parks Program Framework and a Greenway Network Plan. The Parks Program Framework is really taking what was in the vision plan and identifying the types of facilities and experiences that should be accommodated across the whole of the East Bank, and figuring out what their geographic distribution should be, so that when there's any individual decision making about a certain park or open space, it fits into the larger network. So we can have baseline program goals for each space, and when we're negotiating with private developers that have publicly accessible open space, we can say this is the distribution of needs, and these are the types of facilities that should be within this park. Similarly, with the Greenway Network Plan, it's taking what was envisioned in Imagine East Bank and looking at the feasible detailed alignments and how those integrate with bike and pedestrian facilities, and then identifying planning, regulatory and land acquisition strategies to help us implement the Greenway Network. So this is kind of taking what was from the vision and putting it into more detailed information so we can implement our great parks and greenway planning. And then we have a couple of projects going with TDEC. We received a brownfield redevelopment area grant for $100,000 to complete subsurface and geotechnical assessments for along the riverfront in the metro-owned land. That testing has been underway. Mid-May was the first round of borings so that we can understand what the soil condition is there along the East Bank. And then finally, we are in a voluntary cleanup and oversight program to address and help in the redevelopment of property that could be impacted by contaminants. So this provides limited liability for Metro and oversight in the investigation and cleanup process. And so all the sites under construction have soil management plans, and this is keeping us in legal, in a good spot with the legal as we work on redeveloping potential brownfields. So, as Ben mentioned, informational presentation on floodplain management and stormwater infrastructure is set for the next meeting, which is June 24th. We'll have Director Potter and hope to have the senior hydraulic engineer from the U.S. Army Corps who worked on the floodplain maps and has done a lot of modeling for us to come and talk about the plan for redeveloping the East Bank safely and resiliently. And we're open to other future topics and how you would like to continue getting up to speed on all the work that's been done. Happy to talk about that now, or you can talk to Chair Lamb and she'll pass those requests along to us. But please let me know if you have questions. I know that you guys are operating at a 30,000 foot level, and we are in the weeds of it, and we have kind of given you a picture of both of those and where we're at with some of the work on the East Bank. So yeah, definitely interested in your feedback and questions, but that concludes our long presentation.
Are there any questions or comments for him?
Great. Yeah, Ben, thanks. And last week we heard a lot from Fallon and all your different consultants, and now we're hearing schedules and stuff. We hadn't really talked a lot about funding. It'd be nice to sort of bring it all together. You know, Fallon's not going to start to the third quarter of next year. TPAC's out there. We don't know what resolution there is. Fallon's partner is Holiday Properties, and they're, where they are with their, affordable housing, all this infrastructure, and then funding. I know you're meeting with Rachel here soon about the new state legislation about the infrastructure district. So it'd be nice to bring it all, maybe not next month, but Sooner the better.
Yeah, and I think we've got eyes on that as well, and we're trying to figure that out because I don't think it's tenable to go to Metro Council every year to have a massive request or even a small request fiscally. And so we're trying to figure out what that means from a financial standpoint. HCR has done a really deep dive on the model, the financial model on that, and then also that ties into a scheduled model. We're working on that as well. And so every 3-6 months, that kind of changes based on assumptions that we had made. And so we're working through what that means and what that looks like from a planning perspective, not just planning for the phasing of the future, but also the financial phasing of the future. There's a bunch of different opportunities out there. I think having the finance director on board, being able to start that conversation probably within the next 3 months, understanding what are all of the options on the table, put all of the pros and cons list together of what's good, what's not good, what do we like, what do we not like, and trying to structure in what each of those looks like. And maybe it's a combo of a couple, maybe it's one standalone. We're actively kind of talking about that in the background, but we haven't really gotten our arms around which one is, with the state law being so new, we haven't gotten our arms around what exactly that means for just the East Bank. Is it a metro government-wide solution? Is it just a East Bank solution? There's transit redevelopment districts as well. There's bids. There's all kinds of different mechanisms out there and way we could structure these. And so we're looking at those from a global perspective as well as just a local perspective. But yeah, we intend to have a much more hearty discussion on the phasing of what comes next and how we plan that future infrastructure fiscally.
Anybody else?
I just want to say thanks to Ben and Anna for such a detailed presentation and getting the board up to speed, and also just remind the board, how new this all is. We really the intergovernment agreement was approved last month. So I think this is our first board meeting with that in place, and really encourage Ben and Anna and the staff and the consultant teams to really treat, I know there's been so much interest in the East Bank Boulevard, really treat this as a trust building exercise, both with the general public who have put so much thought and comment into both the Imagine East Bank plan and this recent public engagement, but also our state and metro partners who have enabled this authority to this board. This will be a long-term project. We will be developing the East Bank over the next many decades. There will be many times that we will have to deviate from this plan for challenges seen and unseen. And the best way to do that is by having a steady base of trust in all these partners and in the general public in Nashville. So thank you for seriously considering the feedback that's coming your way, and really encourage, this board to continue to keep an eye on how we are developing these first few pieces. And it will really be a test case of how all these partners work together. So thank you.
Just a quick question for both of you. As someone who's reported to lots of boards over the years, what do you most need from us right now?
Through its weight. I think it would be helpful for us to know the things that you're interested in, the things that you would like to see in upcoming topics. As you can tell, we tried to put together a presentation today that solely focused on infrastructure, and we could have gone double the slides. And so also understanding the level of detail that you would like. If you are not interested in the small few hundred feet of fiber line that we are negotiating on moving, but want to know big picture, how are we going to execute subsurface utilities, especially electric and communications, we can bring in the specialists that are doing that work for us and provide briefings from the experts in those fields. So I think just off the top of my head, I'm probably thinking about it more detailed. I can reach out with further questions, but I think for us, let us know as you guys are trying to digest a huge amount of information. Which are the areas that you're most interested in hearing about and focusing on, and what guidance do you need from the two of us who hold so much in our brains of many 4 or 5 years of work on this to help us, get it into digestible form for us. So feedback on today, if you're like, that was too much, not enough, I wanted to know more about this, that would be helpful as we work to get everyone up to speed. And if there are work sessions in particular that would be helpful, we can do that also. So we're all new at this for the East Bank, and all wanting to do this well. And so open to criticism, feedback, and wanting to equip you the best we can for your conversations in the community as well. Did you?
I would say that mainly we just want feedback, just to open communication. That's what's made our working partnership work so well, is we overly communicate usually. And so any communication feedback, if you're hearing things in the community, if there's things that pop up from month to month that you want to just get out on the record and we have a conversation about in public, we can do that as well. I'd rather communicate it out if we can.
I have a question about communication. Speaking of, so at the beginning of the meeting, we heard 5 or 6 people from the public speak in opposition to a 6 traffic lane boulevard. And then you in your presentation said that there were, AECon said there were different ways that different areas talk about this, and so there could be a misunderstanding. Is my understanding correct that the 6 lane is not decided upon? Are we still in the process of designing it? Where is that?
No, we haven't made any of that decision in stone. That is all kind of guidance based on the technical data that we've received to date, and the output that we're receiving from the technical groups. We're working on a 4-lane general purpose lane cross section with 2 transit lanes. The 2 transit lanes are never going anywhere. That is a design assumption that we kind of have implemented as a bedrock decision, much like the speed limit, much like the lane widths, those kinds of things. Those are design related issues that we have said this is one of the things that will occur. Wide sidewalks are also one of the things that we say will occur. And so we've started kind of hemming them in to really, there's only a couple of decision points that are left. And so they're giving us data-driven solutions that would say, preferred is the technical is disregarded or removed alternatives. Those are alternatives that still exist and are still being contemplated. They're just not the preferred. And so there's a whole conversation in there about how that is structured, how that is worded, where that data came from. And I think we can dive into that a little bit more at the June meeting to kind of better understand kind of where that is and how we got to where we are and what data we're being shown and what data is out there. And we do intend to have conversations with groups just to better kind of relay that information, but to not get to a point where we're meeting with one off group here, one off group there, and it kind of becomes a little bit of a shell game. We don't want that. We would rather have one conversation and kind of get it out in the open. And so it may be a place where we just have that conversation here rather than say, different places, meeting with different groups. And we would rather just kind of have that dialogue in public. And so we're trying to figure out what that cadence is and who that audience is.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah. To that point, ultimately on a decision this large, will you ask for our approval?
We would not structurally ask for your approval unless you would. I don't know exactly how the bylaws were written on that. We would have to go back and look. As the asset owner is not on the board, we would ask that asset owner to put the final seal of approval stamp on that. And that being the Department of Transportation.
Hey, how you doing, Ben?
Hey,
I just want to go on record. Last month, I brought up affordable housing and what the AMI was and what it entailed. I had a conversation with File, and they are going to build affordable housing in the 30 to 50% AMI. So I just want to go on record because these are recorded conversations. So I just want to go on record and say that, So All right.
Anybody else? Okay, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.